Welcome to the fifth Open Dial event by the Alliance of British Watch and Clockmakers. I'm joined today by Crispin Jones, founder of Mr. Jones Watches. I'm Rikki from the Scottish Watches podcast. You can listen to me if you like what you hear Mondays and Thursdays, but I'm not the star attraction today. Mr. Jones Watches are. So how are things going, Crispin?
Yeah, going very well. I'm looking forward to the chat with you tonight and to sharing the videos and stuff that we made with all the people watching.
We have a good selection of videos, and we're also fielding questions from you guys. If you've got any thoughts, questions, queries on what you see, be sure to drop them on the website and we'll try and get through as many as possible. Also want to say this event is sponsored by A Collected Man, and yeah, let's just get started with the first video.
Hello and welcome to our workshop at Dartmouth Road. We're going to have a look at this site at the printed watches that we do. So Paul, who's the head of printing at Mr. Jones Watches, is going to talk you through some of the printing processes that we do. Then we'll follow the components through their journey to make up a watch. So Mariana will do some of the post-printing prep work on them before they get assembled. Then we'll see Kat do some assembly of the watches, and then finally they'll be passed to the customer service team, which is Anya and Sophia, who will talk you through the quality control checks and also the last stages that happen to the watch before they can be packed up and sent out.
Hi, my name is Paul and I'm the head of printing at Mr. Jones Watches. Today we're printing the hour hands for perfect use this afternoon, and basically all the print components are printed using the pad printer, which is this, which I can show you how it works. So basically what's happening here is the pad is picking up the ink that is left inside the reservoir on the etched area. This is the etch plate, and this is where the ink goes over and stays inside the etched area here, and then the excess ink is then dragged back and left back into the cup. When we engage the machine goes back, picks up the ink, and then places it onto the substrate, onto the hour disc, and that is a printed, finished one there. All the etchings and the artwork is etched here as well with the laser engraver. So all the colours on the components are printed individually, one by one, and all these colours are then mixed by hand here. So these are all the pigment inks. So once we mix them, they're on a Pantone reference. The level of detail you can get on them because of the very, very small amounts of micro adjustments that the machine is able to make, which is really, really cool. So the level of detail that you can get on these is pretty good. And then once all the components are printed, we then laser cut them, so then they're ready for assembly. So we have to make sure that the rivet hole size and the outer diameter are concentric to each other. And they also have to be perfect size as well for the rivets, because if they're too loose or they're too tight, then you will have problems with the assembly and they won't run correctly. So it has to be super duper precise. So then we have to get a center hole. So then once we've got the center hole defined, we can then print the entire disc. So yeah, that's it once it's been cut, and then they come off here, and then they're ready for assembly.
Well, I learned a lot from that because I didn't realise just how much was involved. I thought your watches, they were beautiful, well designed, put together at a price point that dictated there wouldn't be quite as much behind the scenes going on. I thought it was kind of stamped one and done. So that opened my eyes a little bit, but we actually forgot to do something. We were in such a rush to get to the first video, we forgot to do the wrist check. So what are you wearing today?
So I'm wearing Perfect Use this afternoon today, which is our single best-selling watch. I try to cycle through wearing, actually it's the first time that I've worn it for an extended period. I've worn it for maybe 2-3 months now. And I try to cycle through as many of the different watches that we make as I can to try and just to live with them for a while. I think you learn a lot from actually having each of the watches on your hand. And in this case, even though it's one that we've been printing for 2 years now, we did make a very small revision to it. There was, totally the insight that I got from wearing it, just a small detail that I wanted to change.
And where do your designs come from, more specifically the one you're wearing just now?
So this was designed for us by a Belgium artist and illustrator called Christophe Devos. Christophe's kind of a nice story. He come across our watches somewhere. I'm actually not sure where, but he sent us an email on spec saying, "Do you accept submissions from people?" We said, "Yeah," we didn't know who he was. By all means, send us your ideas. We didn't hear from him for like about 6 weeks, and then he sent a very comprehensive set of proposals for 4 or 5 different watches, of which this was one of them. We made only fairly minor revisions to it, to be honest, and that was like a dream for us. Yeah, someone submitting stuff on spec. Nice finish, like the circle of that story. Christoph, because all of the artists get royalty from the watches if they're reissued into our permanent collection. Christoph last year at the, I think in December, was able to give up his design work that he didn't like doing, his kind of commercial design practice, and take up teaching part-time because of the royalties that he was getting from particularly this watch, Perfect Use this afternoon. But I was really happy for him. Yeah. No, it is. It's our best-selling model.
Well, you sent me 3 watches to have a look at ahead of time here, and that was one of them, but it was instantly stolen by one of my co-hosts, Barbara Palumbo, who also works for Vanity Fair, Revolution, some really high-end magazines and online publications, and it caught her eye immediately, and she said, "Can I get that one to check out?" So that will not be here on my desk today, so I'm glad that you've got it. And the question I would have there would be, how long does it take to go from the idea stage, somebody maybe coming up with the designs, showing you them on spec, to the prototype, to it appears on the website for sale?
I mean, it's a real how long is a piece of string question. Like with Perfect Use this afternoon, Christoph's design was like more or less there. It was probably 90% there when he submitted it. For us to take the design and sample it, depending on how busy we are in the workshop and how quickly we can fit it in, is probably a sort of 3-week, 4-week process to make all the printing plates, sample it, make some minor revisions, because there's always revisions after the very first sample, to get it to a state where we're happy to kind of send it to the artist, like engage, sort of talk it through what changes we make. But Christoph's was an unusual one. Like Christoph's very quick. Actually all of the people that we work with outside the company have never designed a watch before. Like I've never worked with anyone who's like, I used to design watches for Swatch, where it never happened. Like they're always artists or illustrators who work in different mediums, different formats. But so for some of them, it can be quite a lengthy process, because we've got to, first of all, explain the idea of the watches that we do, which have the printing on transparent discs and some quite unusual sort of techniques and things like the jump hour mechanism and things that I think we'll come on to later. But it can be quite a lengthy process from start to finish. I think the longest, we released a watch last year that we started in mid-2017, and there were various like dead end stop starts along the way. Like we didn't continuously work on it for how many years that is, 4 years. But it was a 4-year process start to finish, and we did get quite close to releasing it at one point. And then actually I was wearing it for an extended period, and I was just not happy with some of the details on it. So yeah, it got pushed back again. But that was actually the longest. Like so between 4 years and a couple of months, I guess, would be the
3 weeks to 4 years. That's a good gestation period.
Somewhere between that.
Yeah. Well, before we move to the next video, you need to tell me all about the watch that I am wearing. So let me pop this off the wrist, hold it up to the camera, although the quality will not be super great. And you can tell me.
This is a really nice thing. So this was designed by Paul, who is the head of printing. So Paul is a fine art printmaker as well as working for me. And he was really captivated by the Mars rover and the fact that Mars has 2 moons that circle it. So it is kind of the red planet, it's Mars, and it's got these 2 moons that are glow in the dark. So they have a luminous compound on the printing ink, which was something we had never done before. It's quite difficult with the pad printing to build up sufficient sort of amount of the luminous material to get that sort of luminizing effect. On a traditional watch, you can paint it on much more thickly, or silkscreen print it on much more thickly. But so for us, yeah, it was quite experimental for us to get that effect. But yeah, he makes these prints that are kind of imaginary landscapes mostly. So it's actually quite closely aligned with his work, where it's a kind of imaginary landscape of Mars in this case, rather than most of his like Earth landscapes.
Fantastic. Right, well, I think it's probably time we see a little bit more of what you guys get up to behind the scenes now and roll the next video.
Hi, my name is Mariana. I am an assembly assistant and I am in charge of doing all the prep for the different components that make our watches. One of the first things we do is to fit glasses into cases. We already have the printed components here that you saw Paul doing, and we're going to use this machine here. There is a pneumatic press. A pneumatic press uses compressed air to generate the necessary force to fit a glass tightly enough into our case. Here is the force in decanewtons, which is the equivalent, more or less, 1 decanewton is 2.2 pounds in force, more or less. And the first thing we have to do is grab our printed glass, make sure that it doesn't have any imperfections. Then we align the glass into the case according to each model. The lines are perfectly matched. Then we make sure it's all even in the case. We place it here in our machine, put this handle down, and then press the release button. And then we make sure everything is even. So after we have our glasses in cases, another part of our prepping process for each component of our watches is riveting. So riveting consists of putting a rivet, which is a hollow pin consisting of 2 parts, in the middle of our printed discs that serve in our watches as hands. So I'm gonna do some riveting here of the hours for Perfectly Useless Afternoon. We grab our disc, our printed print down with our tweezers, avoiding leaving any fingerprints. We put the disc print down on top of the rivet. Push it down. The disc should fit in the rivet tightly, but not excessively tightly. And once we have it in, we put it in this little press that we call goat. That is originally intended for fitting jewels into movements. We have a pusher here that corresponds with the size of the rivet. And then we put the second part of the rivet here that's gonna attach the disc firmly. Every disc needs a few firm pushes. We turn it around so we make sure everything is even. And when we are done, we do the final checkings. We grab it by the center and make sure it's not spinning.
Hi, I'm Kat. I'm one of our watch assembly technicians, and today Natalie and I are assembling a Perfect Use this afternoon. Once our discs have been riveted and the glasses pressed into cases by Mariana, we're now ready for assembly. So first up, we check the dial for any imperfections and any printing errors. Once we're happy with that, we're then able to move on to fixing the discs onto the movement. One of our biggest challenges in assembly with working with discs as opposed to hands is the fact that there's a greater surface area for dust to attract to, and so we spend a lot of care and attention in making sure that the discs are dust-free. Another area we pay a lot of attention to is the fact that the discs need to be perfectly parallel to each other. If the discs were perhaps leaning to one side or touching onto the dial, it would cause the watch to run slow and not keep time. For this particular model, the rubber duck in the swimming pool has to align perfectly with the person in the swimming pool's foot. And once we're happy with that, it's then ready to go into the case. For our cases, we use dial spacer rings. This allows us to use both our quartz and mechanical movements with the same interchangeable case. And the nylon spacer keeps the movement secure in the case. We then do our final checks and check the watch for alignment and any imperfections and dust. We then set it to time and put it on the mat for time testing. Once it's been time tested overnight, it then goes to our customer service team.
Hiya, I'm Sophia. I'm a member of the customer service team here at Mr. Jones, and I am here to show you the finishing touches we put on the watches once we receive them from our assembly team. So the first step is to engrave the case backs with our laser engraver over here. We create all our artwork files on Adobe Illustrator and then transfer them over to this machine. As you can see, I've already loaded up the artwork here, and I'm just going to grab a case back, a plain one, and open up this machine. You pop it in the holder and align it to these markings. Place it back in, and then it will automatically engrave. So once the case back is engraved, we just need to pop it on the watch. We do this using this case back press here. And it's really important to make sure this is aligned properly. And then just pop it in. It doesn't take too much pressure. As you can see, that's now attached to the watch. Final step is to pop a strap on it. These have quick release spring bars, so they're really easy to take on and off. Sometimes our customers will swap out straps and buy extra ones to customise them. We also offer custom engravings, which one we've done earlier here is, it says time to treat yourself, which is quite nice. And then we just pop it in a box with a little insert card, and this is ready for stock.
Hi, I'm Anya. I'm part of the customer service team here at Mr. Jones Watches, and I'm just getting an order ready for our customers. So I just pick up a watch that we've placed into stock, and this is our final quality check to make sure they're going out to our customers in perfect condition. So I make sure the crown is facing the right way and all the dials are aligned. Check the straps and the case backs. That looks perfect. The next step is I always sign and date the insert cards and give them a stamp to make sure the customer knows that they've been properly checked by us. This goes into the box, and we place a slipcase on the top to make sure it's safe.
Well, again, I just want to say that there's so much going on there that I didn't expect to see. And when you sent these watches up for me to check out, the cases they came with, you know, the printing, the inserts, all the stuff, it was a very polished package. And I was thinking this would be fantastic, not maybe for myself, but as a gift for somebody as well, maybe towards Christmas. You know, the price point is in the right ballpark. Got some questions. First of all, the most important member of the team we got to see there in sort of a faraway shot. What's the name of the dog?
That's Stanley the shop dog.
Right. And what is his function within the
His
business?
function is to bring like a level of chaos and anarchy to the whole operation, really. Like Stanley, so he has a little seat in the window. We're in a converted shop, so we have people passing by, like stop and look through the window all the time. So Stanley sleeps in his little bed in the window, but he hates people stopping to look at him. So people are continually stopping to look at him because he's really sweet, sat in his window seat, and he just barks at them and just generally, creates havoc.
Havoc and Mayhem. Right, okay, so that's his official title. And when parts are dropped on the floor, does he pick them up and run away with them?
No.
You're not trained them properly.
No, he's more like, he's the guard dog for the couriers, any delivery, anyone stopping in front of the shop, he'll bark at.
Excellent, that's good. Well, on to more watch-related stuff. You mentioned in the video, the video mentions itself, quartz and automatic. I didn't realise that there was a split. Have you always done that, or is it more recently you've maybe done the mechanical stuff?
Exactly, like at the start, we did exclusively quartz watches. I think our customer base really is not, it's not that they don't care, it's that they're not fascinated by the difference between the two. We as sort of makers and craftspeople would prefer to do more mechanical watches, but I'm always conscious that if it adds a lot of cost to the product and our customers don't care about it, it seems a pointless thing to do. So yeah, we mostly do, actually it's about a 50-50 split now between quartz and mechanical. The mechanical really came about originally because I wanted to jump our mechanism we had a watch called The Last Laugh, which was the time displayed on a skull's teeth. And originally that was released as a quartz watch. So the upper row of teeth that shows the hours was a disc, and the lower row was a disc as well. But the hours disc was rotating constantly. So it became difficult to read when it got to sort of 350. It looked like it was saying 450 because the 4 numeral had rotated in. So I learned about jump hour mechanisms, and I found Seagull in China, one of the only people who make a jump hour mechanism, and they only made it as a mechanical watch. So that was actually our first time doing mechanical timepieces, and it was really just for that technical thing of then the hour numeral would be static and the disc with the minutes on would be rotating.
Right, okay, perfect. Well, you answered the next question I was going to ask there was, what is the split auto to mechanical? And you've given me the answer there. Now we've got some questions coming through. If you've just joined us, you can write some questions, ask the guy here, the man in charge, anything you like. We'll try our best to get through as many as possible. A couple of questions already in. What are your thoughts on smartwatches?
Yeah, I mean, I have mixed feelings on it. Like, my background is actually in design for electronics, design for I guess electronic devices like mobile phones or computers. So I was very screen based before I ever started doing watches. I think like the things that excite me about smartwatches are the possibilities for linking up the time information to like non-standard data sources. A long time ago, I worked on a series of devices that were for bus timetables, so for alerting people for how close a bus was, so reimagining a sort of countdown in a physical form. And so smartwatches excite me on one level, but I don't have access to, or I don't have time really to sit down and learn enough of the coding to do interesting things with it. I find smartwatches really boring where people just place the graphic of a traditional watch face on a digital display. I just think it's pointless.
Fair enough. And we've got another question before we jump to our next video, and it relates to the doggy question in the window that I asked. It looks like you have quite a few people working with you. How many folks do you actually have on the team?
So in the team in total, 17 people. That includes the shop weekend staff. Like, we have a small shop in the Oxo Tower in central London that used to be the sort of studio workspace as well. So yeah, there's like 5 people in the sort of customer service, order packing, shop staff. There's another 3 people who are in the communication team who all work remotely. Sorry, 4 people who all work remotely on our sort of social media and just general communication stuff. And then the rest of the team is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 people who do the printing, gilding, and assembly.
Well, and a dog. Perfect.
Actually, 2 dogs.
2? Oh,
dog,
right, we've missed one.
Dog at both sides, yeah.
Perfect. That's good, as long as you have equilibrium between them all.
Exactly.
Right, we should probably jump into the next video, and this is one of my favourite videos because obviously I've seen these before. So here we go.
Hello again. We've made the short trip across South London to our other workshop, which is in Camberwell. At this site, we really concentrate on the gilded watches, so the precious metal foils that are gilded onto the glasses and the various other components of the watch. In the same way as at Dartmouth Road, where we followed the journey of one watch, in that case a perfectly useless afternoon, over at this site we'll follow the journey of another of our watches, the Ascendant, as we print and gild the various components and then make up the watches. So if you'd like to follow me, we'll get started. So Ellen is going to talk you through the gilding process, along with Ali and Louise, who are the print technicians who work with her here at Vanguard Court. And then we're going to take the components through to Laura, who's going to assemble the watch.
Hi, I'm Ellen. I'm Senior Print Technician at the workshop in Vanguard Court for Mr. Jones watches. We are currently printing the Ascendant watch, and it goes through a couple of processes, including size gilding and water gilding. It's got about nine layers with printing and gilding, with green inks, black inks, white inks, and silver. We use palladium in this watch, transfer, and we also use loose leaf for the water gilding. So we've got the stages of the process here, and it goes through ink to size gilding with transfer palladium, ink, more transfer palladium and size gilding, all the way to the end with a water gilding finish, which creates a mirrored effect for the water in the background.
Hey, I'm Lou, and I'm doing the water gilding for the Ascendant. So for this, we've got a water gelatin-based size, and we flood the glass with that quite a lot, and then pick up the palladium transfer and apply that to the glass. That then takes a bit of time to adhere, and it looks more like that soon. And then after that, we polish it with a cloth, and it starts to bring out the shine and the mirror surface. So it's really important to have natural light for this. Gilding was made to be seen in the natural light, and also for us to be able to make sure there's no gaps or holes, and to really get the full effect of the mirror type. And sometimes at this point you need to regild because there's gaps or areas that it's missed, so then you do a second layer. And then once that's all done, I take it over to Ali, and she will finish the glass by removing any excess palladium and neatening the edge.
Hi, I'm Ali. I'm another printer here at Mr. Jones Watches, and at the moment I'm just finishing off the glasses after they've been gilded, just by Lou. And what I do first is, with some degreaser and a cotton bud, I just clean off the excess palladium. And then after I've done this, I just go over with a paintbrush and some silver ink over the whole back of the design. And this helps to back the rest of the gilding and the printing, so that it helps protect it when it goes through to be assembled.
So in this workshop, we also airbrush dials. So each one's individually hand sprayed. For the Ascendant, as you can see, there's a blue spray. It acts as the sea disappearing into the sky with a kind of mist, a sea mist coming off it. So we load up the ink into the well of the airbrush. I would normally wear a safety mask, and we use this ventilation system. So with the Ascendant, we just work from the bottom up to the middle. So after each dial is dry, we then pop them into a little holder. We need to angle the holder so the dials lie diagonally, so they don't scratch one another with the feet on the back. Because each dial's been sprayed individually, they are all sort of one-offs, and we then pop it into the jig in the printer, print on the mountain layer with the white ink. And this is the last layer, so we can take this through to assembly.
Hi, my name is Laura. I am part of the assembly team, and I'm going to be assembling some Ascendant. Ascendant uses a mechanical jump hour movement, so it works a little bit different from the quartz movements that you've seen on Afternoon, because in this case the hour disc sits underneath the dial. So I'm going to start by fitting the hour disc on the movement. First thing to do is to clean it and prep the movement. Then we need to make sure that there's no excess of grease or anything. And then I check that the mechanism is running correctly, and then it's jumping properly. So now I can fit the dial on the movement. So now the only thing you can see is 1 hour, like just one number. Then to fit the minute disc, I need to flip the hour and then make sure that it doesn't go any further. And then we use this tool to set all the disc into the movement. And now I just need to check that it's flipping at the exact time, which it is. And then that the rivets are not loose, that there's no dust. Then we fit the rota of the watch again that I have taken off before to protect the movement when pushing in the disc. Check again that everything's flipping correctly and that there's no dust inside the watch. And then I set it to time. Wind it, and then it's ready to be tested both statically on the mat and on the winding machine on the wall.
Oh, the video's ended. I was enjoying that there. The questions I'm going to hit you with straight away because it's pertinent right in front of me there. The jumper movement, explain about that. Where does it come from? What's the intricacies involved in that?
Like generally jump power movements, or like the specific one that we use, or
both?
Okay.
Explain the process.
Okay, the jump power movement has, rather than having a hand that moves through a 30-degree arc over the 60 minutes of an hour, flips on the exact 59 to 0 minute transition. So we like it because it makes the watch face fairly static. So we can make like an image on it. There'll be a part of it that we have a sort of cutout that shows the hour, and then we can have a larger transparent disc that shows you the minutes. But it gets around the issue of having like two things moving constantly, and it really makes, like I said, that kind of static image. So like the Ascendant watch that we saw the gilding team making has this kind of beautiful sort of chinoiserie, this kind of Japanese looking scene of a mountainside with a tree on it, and through the branches of the tree you can see the hour, and then you have stars and the moon that show you the minutes in like different combinations of stars read as different minutes.
Yeah, it's a complication that I would usually expect to see on an expensive, really expensive watch. So the fact that you're using that in this is brilliant. I've got a watch that doesn't have a jump hour complication but could do with it, and that's my Mad 1 Red, because depending how you read the time on it, you can be reading it an hour ahead. Because as the hours are moving, the hour's getting closer to the point you read, and you look a little bit ahead. I've got another watch on my wrist, and I want you to talk about this. Right, let me get this off here. And because we just talked about the gilding process and all the rest of it, this one here, I mean, the way this reacts to light, especially outdoors, is phenomenal. So what one's this?
So this is a watch called Ricochet. This was designed by a guy called Ryan Claytor, who's a comic book artist in America. He's another artist actually who approached us. Like, I never met him before. He just sent us an email one day saying, I make these comic books, I'd be interested in designing a watch for you. This is actually the second watch that he did for us. But Ryan's one of those people who becomes very fascinated with the process and stuff, really engaged with us and really worked hard to understand the kind of techniques that we used. And he was sort of fascinated that we'd only ever done watches with 2 precious metal gildings on. So he decided he wanted us to do one with 3 on, which is why there are 3 robots on there. Technically, it was actually a big challenge because it looks fairly simple, and 2 gildings versus 3 gildings. I mean, how hard can it be? The problem with the gildings, once you start layering them up, is that subsequent gilding layers start to peel off the previous ones. So you just have really high losses in the production process, and it can get very frustrating for the team making it. But yeah, it's a really nice watch. It's got, again, the jump hour complication, so it's a very static kind of display, and on the scoreboard of the pinball machine you've got the hours and minutes for your time display.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. Really like the design of this one, and the jumper. It's just a great mechanism. Now, which precious metals are used on this one here?
So the coppery coloured metal is a rose gold. There's a silvery coloured metal that's palladium, and then a yellow gold on there. When we originally released it, so all the watches we do when they originally come out are released as a numbered edition. It's kind of the first edition, if you like, of each design. If it's popular and there's enough enthusiasm from our customer base, then we'll reissue it as part of the permanent collection, but we'll always make adjustments between the two. So one of the adjustments we made on this one was we went from the copper gilding to rose gold. Copper is not pressed as thin as precious metals because it's not as valuable, so they don't bother to press it as thin. That makes it very difficult to work with, because the thicker the metal, the less nicely it kind of lays down on the glass. So rose gold's much better because much thinner. The palladium that we use was really just is to give us a silver coloured metal more than any particular love for palladium. We did use silver originally, like fine silver, but even the finest grade of silver you can get as a gilding material tends to tarnish over time, and it tends to react badly with the solvents that are in the printing inks and things. It just did odd. It was kind of unpredictable. Palladium, though, is super inert. It doesn't do anything unexpected when it's gilded. And the yellow gold, yeah, obviously is a similar thing. I think it's a 23 karat gold. They're all very high carat golds, so none of them tarnish, and you get that really brilliant kind of luster.
100%, yeah, totally agree with that. And that was a question I was going to ask with the copper, if it started to greenify and oxidize. Yeah, great little watch. How long does it take to create a watch start to finish when you're doing the whole process?
I mean, it's not how long is a piece of string. Like the Ricochet watch is probably the longest production process that we have, and we do it in batches of about 100 pieces at a time, maybe 120, because we'll have some losses in there. But the thing that takes a long time is that the gildings need time to dry. So each layer of gilding is laid down on one day, and then it needs to have 24 hours to dry before we can apply the next layer. It's very different from, so, you can see already there's 3 days in there just to do the gildings, the printing on top, and then the assembly and stuff. But it's very different from like the Perfectly Useless Afternoon, the watch I'm wearing, and the one that we saw in the first video, where because that's all printed layers, by the time each color has been printed and the machine's been changed over to the next color, those inks have dried, so they're ready for the next layer. So you can just cycle through constantly. So we could get all the components done for a batch of Perfectly Useless Afternoon done in a couple of days, probably. And then the assembly is probably a similar amount of time. There's quite a lot of prep between printing and assembly. So things like cutting the discs, riveting the discs that we saw in that first video. But yeah, probably a week start to finish for Afternoon, probably 2 weeks start to finish for Ricochet.
Yeah, again, saying it's just not a simple, quick process of it goes in, gets stamped out, and it's sold on. I like the fact there's palladium involved because I'm a big Iron Man fan, so I like that a lot. We've got more questions coming in. Here's one here, a bit of a strange one for you. The question is, your work is referred to as the Monty Python of watchmaking because, like the Spanish Inquisition, what you do is totally unexpected. What is your reaction to that?
I mean, what a wonderful compliment. I'm not sure who refers to us as the Monty Python of watchmaking.
I've never heard that one.
We could start calling ourselves that. Mr. Jones watches the Monty Python of watchmaking.
Yeah, Terry
nice.
Jones.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it captures the kind of playful spirit of what we do and the kind of irreverence of what we do. We don't take ourselves too seriously. Nice.
That's the best way to be. It's a bit like me on the Scottish Watches podcast. Definitely do not take myself seriously or this hobby. As much as it's an industry for us, it's all about having fun, and your watches exemplify that. Who is your target customer? Is it young people? Is it the trendy folks? Is it people looking for quirky gifts? Or is it just across the board?
It's an interesting one. I'd tell this with like a long anecdote. When I first started doing Mr. Jones watches, I did all the stuff from home. I worked from home, and I used to go to the post office every day and send out the orders. And so the orders would all come in online. I didn't know who the customers were, and I had this sort of preconceived notion that the customers probably all more or less my age, my sort of background, my interests and things. So that was 2007. In 2009, we got a shop in the Oxo Tower, a very small shop that we still have now. But that was the first time that I started seeing customers face to face. And it was really interesting because it was a really broad cross-section of people. That I think that the thing that united them was the disparity between them. They weren't they weren't all one particular age group. They weren't, you know, it was everyone from like 15-year-old kids who'd come in saving up their birthday money to, I remember vividly like I guess he must have been in his 80s, and he wanted to pay us by check, and he posted us one of those checks written by a very old person with super scratchy writing in it, you know, like break your heart, like so sweet. And he just really wanted one of the watches and things. So yeah, I guess our core audience is male under 30 probably, but I think like what's quite difficult for us is we can send out questionnaires to the customers, you know, who we get online, but most of our business is online, and indeed most of our customers are overseas. The UK is about a third of all of our sales, so 2/3 is overseas, and so we can send out questionnaires to them, but it's become sort of self-selecting, like who responds to questionnaires is not necessarily like who is your overall demographic. And similarly, we can get data on, you know, through sort of Google Analytics of who visits our website, but then you don't know, are they buying as gifts or buying for themselves? So it's, yeah, I'm not totally sure.
It's a little bit like the audience we get asked who listens to our show, and it's across the board. We, a couple of years ago, asked people if they would want to help us out writing show notes for the episodes, and somebody got in touch and they were brilliant at it, so we got them on board. And I think it was about 6 months after they were doing the show notes, really high quality, lots of images, lots of links, we found out it was a 15-year-old kid from New York.
Wow.
And we had no clue. So it just goes to show this hobby, this industry, it's all encompassing. You know, young, old, doesn't matter where in the world you're from. This young kid was from over in Portugal, there or thereabouts, and moved across to New York. But before we bore people too much with us speaking, let's roll the next video.
I'm here with Elena, who's the head of production at Mr. Jones Watches, and what we've done is we've picked out a selection. It's a fairly arbitrary selection of watches from the past 15 years of the company that are kind of in different ways sort of landmarks in the company's evolution and the sort of evolution of the kind of watches that we make. The first watch that I really want to show is from the very first series, which is called the Accurate. And this is the watch that has an hour hand that says remember and a minute hand that says you will die. It's a kind of link to the historical tradition of the memento mori.
Very uplifting.
Very uplifting. But it was a really kind of key sort of signature piece for us early on, because it was, I always thought I would wait 1,000 years for Swatch to come to me and say, will you design a watch that says remember you will die? It felt so uncommercial as a product. And yet, actually, it was the most successful watch from that first series. It was super popular for a number of years. It's still a watch we make now. I've got the contemporary version, which is with metal hands now rather than printing on transparent discs, but still the same text, the remember you will die. You know, without losing the message of the watch, we've managed to make a different version that we can manufacture ourselves here. So now we've got metal hands and we've dispensed with the mirror dial, and our life is exponentially simpler.
Oh my God, and everyone in production is forever grateful for those changes.
I guess the next watch that I wanted to talk about is Cyclops, which, like the Accurate, was a very conventional way of displaying the time. It's got a shorthand meaning the hour and longhand meaning the minutes. Cyclops was a more playful watch, so it's got a single hand to show the time, which is in this case just the hoop, and it's really using the fact that the hand is printed on the transparent disc, so you've got no visible connection to the center, and instead of numbers for the hours, you've got the 12 coloured circles and a slightly different way of reading it, where when it's exactly on the colour, it's exactly on the hour. Just touching the next one's quarter past, halfway in between the twos, half past, and so on. So it has like a different sort of language that you need to learn for reading the time. It's still a watch we make today. Actually, one of, I think Paul would say, the most technical print that we do. Even though it looks incredibly simple, I think actually the fact that it looks so simple is what makes it so technical, because there's no margin for any error in the printing at all. Cyclops is year 3. I still had some energy for it by then. Year 4, I was starting to flag, and actually, you know, honestly, I was running out of watch designs. So I collaborated with 5 individuals who had some sort of interesting relationship to time. But the last laugh was designed with a comedian, William Andrews, who I thought comedian has a really interesting relationship to time. It's very nuanced, like fine-grained sense of timing.
Right.
Exactly,
Yeah.
like very precise time. In this case, the teeth display the time. So it's the first watch that we did where it's like a pictorial watch face. I was going to show Van Meel, I think, is another really key milestone. What's great about it is that the time-telling function is integrated within that image. The kraken giant squid operates through 360 degrees and, you know, in the same way that the watch hands do. There's like a really nice link to Perfectly Used This Afternoon, which is super popular for us now. And it's another watch that the first time you look at it, you're a bit puzzled because you're like, I don't understand. There's no hands,
There are no numbers.
Exactly. There's none of the conventional things that I would expect. But, you know, as soon as you see it in motion, you understand that, okay, the rubber duck is the minutes and the foot of the man points to the hours. And it becomes, a really simple, you know, elegant way of incorporating the time within that overall image. The convention of a shorthand meaning the hour and a longhand meaning the minute is just that. It's a convention. It's one of a number of competing systems that was eventually adopted. And there was a period of experimentation before it was the one adopted scheme. So like a sun and moon watch was just a type of watch where instead of an hour hand, you have either the sun or the moon passing through the sky. And you have this crescent shape that is 12 hours running from 6 on the left to 6 on the right. So the sun shows 6 a.m. through to 6 p.m.
So it's a 24-hour watch.
Exactly, but with a 12-hour display. And then the moon's showing you 6 p.m. through to 6 a.m. So the sun and moon watch was popular for us, and we did do a number of variations. There was like the observatory, which was one of the first ones that we printed here. First one of the sun and moon watches that we printed here. But that's just got the comet showing you the minutes. And
the hour disk is not obscured by an upper dial.
Exactly. So you just see the sun and the moon orbiting around the Earth, around the famous NASA image called the Blue Pearl.
Oh, that's nice.
Isn't it?
And then nuage is very similar in terms of the way it's kind of like displayed and the way it's got the aperture at the top. And it's also had the sun and the moon as the indicators for the day and the night, and then the minute hand in the middle.
We should do more sun and moon watches.
We should. They look lovely.
The first gilded watch that we did with a gilding on the watch glass was designed and gilded for us by Marion Labeth, who was working here as a print technician. So the watch is called chinoiserie, and you can see on the glass that there's the two types of gilding. There's the mirror finish and then also the kind of matte effect of the two golds.
We use a lot of palladium in ours. That's what we used for the silver in nuage, themed around air. So it became kind of like an idea for us to continue the 4 elements. And then ascendant is the one that uses only palladium, but again in the 2 finishes, the matte and the polished, kind of a shiny mirror effect. We have the one that uses 3 colors, the gold, the silver, and the copper.
So Ryan Claytor, who we worked with on the design, had this idea for the 3 metal gildings, and we were able to call on all our sort of skill. Ellen was able to call on all of her skill in order to realise that. And it is a beautiful effect.
The collaborations are very different, even though they kind of go through a very similar stages. They can last from weeks to months to years. It depends a lot on the designer. And it depends a lot on kind of like their style and their work.
I mean, it's fair to say as well, we have a pool of artists and illustrators who we work with, and I would say each year we try to grow our pool of artists. And I think that is one of our strengths as a company, like being able to take a static illustration and work out how to animate it.
Exactly. Like the very first images that we saw and that we loved with Honorio, who designed the number cruncher, very static. I don't think that we imagined, I don't think we knew initially how to animate them or how to turn them into something that would work for us.
I guess Honorio is an interesting example as well, because he sent us stuff on spec. We didn't really like what he'd submitted, but we liked some other stuff.
Exactly.
So this was the images, these were the images that we liked on his website.
That we referred him to. And he had this idea of the number cruncher, a monster that would be kind of like crunching numbers, but it lacked the cute features of the monster and the...
But you can see, like even here, he has the essential elements, which is that the monster's holding, he's about to eat the hour, and then the minutes are in the stomach.
In the stomach. So it's a monster, we have the city in the background. Technically it works for us. The numbers on the hour disc and then the numbers in the minute in the stomach that are kind of being digested by the monster. And that's, I think Dove was one who suggested a seconds disc because it would constantly show the things on rotation in the monster's stomach. And that animation ended up working kind of like very well for this design.
I mean, I think, if I'm honest, like our skill as a company is in the editing and refining process, for sure. Like these are highlights, and there were, of course, missteps along the way. And I think we would quite honestly say there were certain watches that we wouldn't release now, where, you know, we were not able to animate the design in an interesting enough way.
Absolutely. But Number Cruncher was such a success story, and still is very popular.
And so that's the limited edition?
That's the limited edition. That's the one that we released in the 100 pieces with the green monster and the orange stomach, just like the final design. And then we made a few changes for the version in the permanent collection, which is changing the color of the monster and the color of the stomach with the blue monster and the green stomach.
So that was our final video. It's a shame that the little mini-series has to end there, because it's really been captivating, learning all the different processes, meeting all these members of the team, although I'm pretty sure you've just hired a lot of actors to kind of come in and fill the gaps there.
They're much better looking than the real team, you see.
Yeah, that's it. Keep them in the back. But a question that I thought of there that we hadn't spoken about before was different sizes of watches. I'd seen on your website that there's a normal size, and then you suddenly introduced a different size. So when did that come about?
So Ariel Adams, who you may know from
good friend,
A
Blog to Watch.
So he came over to the UK maybe in 2015, and he'd posted about us on sort of several occasions, like over the years and stuff. And he said, "I'm in London. I'd love to come in and chat." And he kind of came in and chatted to us. And he said, "What's weird about your watches is you make very bold sort of graphic statements, but they're quite small for." Like certainly he was saying for like an American consumer, because he's American. And to be honest, I had not given it an enormous amount of thought. Like I picked 38mm as a size which kind of I like. Like it was sort of a happy medium for me between a man's watch and a unisex watch. Like it wasn't too large for female customers to buy it. But really, so it was him who kind of opened my eyes to that. And so we did like an XL version of a number of the sort of like the skull watches, like the sort of bolder designs. Now we only have a few in the XL case, but like they are really popular amongst the people who want like a larger size watch. I find.
And what size is that?
It's like 44mm.
Oh, I think there's a jump then, right?
Yeah, no, it is a big jump. And so we also do like a ladies' size case, like a female specific watch, which is like a 30mm case or 31, which like it feels like we cover all the bases. But yeah, our core is really like a unisex offering. So 38mm.
Well, people say that 30mm is the perfect size, and when somebody brings out a 40 or a 39, everyone says, "Oh, 38, that's where you want to be, that's the sweet spot, the magical number of the universe." Watching that video there was a lot of things that resonated with me. The You Will Die watch, that's something that's kind of close to my heart. I had a near-death experience with a motorcycle accident many years ago, and it kind of changed the way I think about things. I wake up and I realise, hey, we don't know how many days we've got left. And with the COVID years, obviously, that's 2 years of our lives kind of gone. But speaking of that, how have things changed for you and the business over the years and leading up to and coming through the COVID years?
So I kind of touched on it like briefly earlier. Like when I first started, it was me working from home, doing everything digitally, like emailing these factories in Hong Kong and just emailing them designs, getting stuff produced so that way. And in fact, me sending out all the orders by schlepping to the post office every afternoon about 4 o'clock. I guess it like the one of the big changes happened in 2011 when I went out to visit the factories for the first time. So from 2007 to 2011, all my communication with them was over email. 2011, I thought, I just thought I'm interested. I don't really know how they're making them. I guess a bit like you, I thought, yeah, I don't know, they're printing them, but they're printing it like on some kind of inkjet printer or something, like all the colors come out at once. And I think, so on that trip, I saw all of the different parts of the production, the case production, the dial production, the printing and stuff. And I was quite captivated by the pad printer. Like you saw it in the video, there's something just fun about it. Like it's a charming little machine.
It's like a kid's toy.
Exactly. It's like this kind of miniature printing press and stuff, and you get to use ink, and it's all kind of, it's quite tangible. It's quite a physical sort of thing. So when I came back from that trip, I thought, what I'll do is I'll set up a little workshop and we'll do all the sampling here. Like I know a lot of people have very negative associations with Chinese manufacturing. I only ever had really positive experiences with them. The only thing that frustrated me was the lead time. Like it would be that I'd send a design and I'd have to wait 5 months, maybe 6 months sometimes to get a sample back. I'd spend 30 minutes with that sample, if that, like 10 minutes with the sample, looking at it going, I changed this and this, and then send it off for production, and then wait another 5 months or so before I got the watches back. And it was really frustrating to have to wait the 5 months to spend 10 minutes just going, all right, that part didn't quite work, and this didn't, and that color's not quite right, and just making these minor changes. So I thought, I came back in from the visit in 2011 and thought, I'll have a workshop just for sampling. What we'll do is we'll sample the watches, we'll get it exactly how we want it, and then we'll send the files to the people in Hong Kong. They'll do the long production. Great. What became clear quite quickly was that if you're going to set up to sample one watch, it's just as easy to print like 10, 20 of them, like the components for 10 or 20. Like all of the time is involved in like mixing the ink, loading the ink onto the machine, like prepping the machine. Like to do that and then just print one component is counterintuitive. It just seems a waste of time. So initially what we started doing was we'd do these micro editions where we'd do just 25 pieces of a design that was all made in our workshop in London. And then the longer run permanent collection watches were all made in China. It became quite a difficult story to tell though over time. And over time we grew the micro editions. We went from 25 piece editions to 50 piece to 100 piece editions. And then we started doing some of the key models here in the UK, and just some of the production was happening in China. And yeah, at a certain point, it just became a quite confusing story to tell, because the customers would say, so this watch is made in London, this watch is made in China. I don't get it. Why? Like, why don't you make them all in London? So we thought actually, yeah, it makes more sense. So I think, I'm not sure exactly on the year, I think it was 2016 or 2017, we started doing all of the production in the UK, because we'd kind of got to the stage there where we were comfortable enough with the process. Like it was quite a steep learning curve, and those 25 piece editions were quite good proving ground for us, because yeah, there were a lot of technical problems to solve, and there wasn't like the kind of watches that we were making, like there's no handbook for it. There's no sort of manual that you can go to and be like, well, how do I print on transparent disc material? What transparent disc material do I get? Where do I get the inks from? Where do I get the pad? Like there's a whole world of stuff that we had to solve sort of along the way. But yeah, by 2016, 2017, we were really getting confident with the process. And yeah, it took us a while to get there. But I'm really happy that we got there anyway, just because I love having the production all here, just because we can be really creative with what we do. Yeah. And we're not, like if we have an idea, we can turn it around really quickly because we're excited and everyone's engaged with it, and that's really fun. And if you're really excited about design and you do it all on screen and then you email it to a factory and then you wait 5 months, it's like the balloon deflates. The whole sort of energy of the process just goes. And yeah.
That's a good point. I mean, it's good that you can turn on a dime if you've got some new ideas that you want to iterate, or even if you wanted to take this watch that I've got sitting here and change up the colour scheme, change what's involved, you can instantly do that. Perfect.
You actually just, Rikki, you alluded to COVID, and that was one of the things. So when COVID first came along, so March, April, I mean, we'd been aware of it a little bit earlier because our supply chain for the cases and some of the movements and stuff have been a bit disrupted before that. But we had our regular sort of schedule of new designs planned in, and all of a sudden it seemed just sort of tone deaf to be like, hey, look at our new funny watch design. So we did sort of pivot on a dime, and we made a watch called that has a bit like the Remember You'll Die watch. It has like a message on the hands where it just says, all this will pass. And because we thought, it's like an uplifting message, and we thought it's kind of weird for us just to do it and not kind of acknowledge the COVID situation. So we made a percentage of the sale price on each watch was donated to the WHO sort of COVID relief fund and stuff. And we just thought, and that was quite a nice sort of energizing moment for the studio, for the whole team, because we were like, the world just seemed to be ending, and it seemed, what can our reaction to this be? Like, we'll make a watch with a kind of positive message, and we'll try to share some of the proceeds from that and stuff. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Difficult to imagine that if we were still in the world where we were like emailing it to the factory and waiting 5 months, and it would have lost all kind of quality. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we are just slightly over time, but we have questions to answer, so we're going to hang around for another 5-10 minutes if you can spare the time with us. Right. Okay. My question would be next. Out of all the watches, all the designs that you've done over the previous decade and a half, what is your favourite? What's your standout? What's your favourite child?
I mean, difficult. Like there are ones that I care more about than others. I guess the Remember You'll Die watch was in the very first series that we did, and for a long time was the most popular watch that we did. And for us, it was a real kind of signature piece. It really set out, how we were different and expressed that kind of, I guess I said before, that irreverence, but also the kind of the sense of having a sort of message and a positive message, I guess, with it. And it is a really polarizing watch. Like, a lot of people who see it think it's a really negative thing, or think, why would you want to carry that around with you? I don't want to be reminded that I'm going to die. But for the people who respond positively to it, it's a really strong reminder to, like you said, after your accident, that you don't know how many days you have left, and you need to make the most of the days that you have. So that's a really important one for me. I'm looking around because I have a number of them laid out on the table. I mean, this watch here I'll show. So this is a watch called the Indefatigable Sphinx. For us, this was a real exercise in what we could do at a slightly higher price point. So this is using a different jump power mechanism that we licensed off Christopher Ward, so their JJ01 jump power mechanism, but it has these 3 areas on the dial that flip with the hours as they go around, and also it's got applied elements on the dial that we've printed on, and just for us, it was a much more complicated project than we'd ever sort of undertaken before. This was the watch actually that I was saying took from however many years, like 4 years, to release, because even it went through, there was a different case for it originally, and there was a different handset for it. The dial and stuff was more or less fixed like this from quite early on, but yeah, the case changed, the handset changed, and it was a bit of a tortuous development, but I was so happy with it when it came out. I wore that almost all of last year when it did come out, to the point where I kind of had to wean myself off it, because I do think it's important that I wear all of the watches that we do, otherwise you
get
lose
jealous.
something if you lose something if you don't wear it. You don't actually wear it yourself. Like you don't experience it in quite the same way.
Good answer. Okay, you didn't throw anyone under the bus. I was going to ask another question, which your most hated or loathed watch that took so much amount of time that you wish you hadn't started, but we'll leave that to the next time. We do have some questions to rattle through before we finish up. The first question here is, where do you see the company in 5 years and 10 years time?
Wow. Okay, one thing, I see us all under one roof. It's been a kind of ongoing project for actually a number of years already. The workshop that I'm in here, the Dartmouth Road workshop, it's an old shop that we renovated and tried to fit out to really well meet our needs. And by the time we'd finished the sort of renovation process, we'd actually grown to the point where we had too many stuff to fit into it. So it was always frustration right from day one that not everyone could fit into this site. So we're looking for like a place where we could house everyone under one roof, because it's just odd. We're a very small company, but we have 2 workshops, as you saw in the video. They're about 3 miles apart, so it's not really close enough that you could just pop over to one at lunchtime, or you kind of got to go over there for the day. So that's our big kind of project on the horizon.
Okay. Right, we're going to do it quick fire because you're good at answering
right.
these questions, and there's a few more to get through. Is there an artist that you would like to work with that you haven't already?
Interesting.
Banksy?
I mean, for the commercial opportunity, maybe. I don't know.
We'll leave that one to simmer in your mind.
Probably not, if I'm not
Probably
able to.
not. Okay then. How easy is it to find?
No, I was just going to say, like, the people we work with, like, what we like to do is work with kind of quite undiscovered people, and because I think what you get from that is they're really engaged with the process, because they don't get a lot of opportunities like this, and they really sort of rise to the occasion. I think the more established the artist is, the less motivation there is. Then it becomes like just another job. Do a watch for this company. If you've got someone who's like graduated 2 years ago from college and not done much since, like massively motivated, they really want to give you the best thing possible. So yeah, I guess
sounds like the kid that does our show notes a little bit there. Yeah. Okay, next question. How easy is it to find and retain staff? Do you need to train them up from scratch on the more technical and mechanical elements?
Interesting. I mean, for the people who do the printing and the gilding, all of them are from a fine art printmaking background. So they're all used to quite sort of, I guess, problem solving. They're used to the sort of technical aspects of print, not pad printing, because that's quite an industrial process and it's not, not a process you would encounter in art college. But it's similar to other print processes. And as I say, they're very good at thinking on their feet and working out sort of solutions to stuff. The people who do the assembly all come from like a bench working jewelry background. Like we never found anyone who had previous watch assembly experience, but they're used to small scale components, like working with their hands. They're used to that sort of thing. So quite quick, it's quite easy to train them because there is a big overlap. They're quite daunted when they first come in. And I guess our challenge when we're recruiting people is so many jewelry bench workers would see, we're looking for people to do watch assembly and they think, I don't know anything about watch assembly. I'm not going to apply, and kind of getting over that barrier. So mostly the majority of our staff are kind of come through referrals.
Good.
So yeah.
Excellent. Oh, you're learning to make your answers a little bit more curt and short. You're doing well. Next question. Do you have a dream design or inspiration you'd love to do, but technically it isn't quite possible or the costs aren't realistic as of yet?
I mean, no, because I think
good answer.
I think it's quite difficult to. One of the reasons that we like working with people outside the company and people who've never designed watches before is that they challenge us. Like it's quite easy if I design a watch, I'm going to design something that's so easy for us to make in our production process because I'm really familiar with it. I'm not going to make life difficult. One of the people who used to work for me called Dovele, she designed a couple of watches for us, one of which she wanted to use flower petals on the disc hands and stuff. And that was really a challenge because it was a nightmare, like sticking tiny little flower petals. But it was really engaging and really, it pushed us. And it was really nice design at the end. So I think I can't envisage the complicated thing that we can't currently make because I sort of lack that. I don't allow myself to think in those terms, and that's what I value about the collaborators. That's one of the things that they bring is that just, I have no idea what you can and can't do. So I'm just going to propose some mad, crazy idea, and then we have to work out how we're going to do it. And yeah, that is one of our skills, I think, as a company, like being able to do that.
Yeah, you're inside the box, they're outside the box.
Exactly.
Yeah. Good,
Yeah.
perfect. And the last question we have from the audience is, how many designs do you get submitted to you every month?
If I'm honest, there is a filter, like the customer service team will filter designs that they don't consider of sufficient quality now. I probably look at half a dozen designs a month, and I try to give feedback to everyone who submits, who makes it through that filter process. I always feel like I feel like a moral responsibility to them, because a lot of them have spent a great deal of time on it. And I would say of those, okay, so 6 a month, that'd be 72 a year. There's probably 2 that we'd take forward. Like the barrier to entry is really high, and not because I'm like super precious about stuff, but number one, we've done 120 different watch designs. We've covered quite a lot of ground already. Number two, like often the proposals are kind of incoherent with the time telling. And I think a lot of people look at our watches and think, you make like a funny picture on a sort of a wrist-based canvas and I can just make anything. But the time telling function absolutely has to be central to it. It can't be just a funny image on your wrist.
It's a watch, not a bracelet.
Exactly. So it has to work. So I would say those are the 2 things that most people fall down on, or just bad puns, like endless bad puns we get. And yeah, I won't go into them. I won't shame people.
No, we'll save that for episode 2. Well, that brings us to the end of this edition of Open Dial. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the event, and there are many more to come. We'll tell you about the next one at the end. Just want to say thank you for also spending the time. Mr. Jones himself here telling us all about things, and thanks to A Collected Man for sponsoring this edition as well. If you've liked what I've said and you want to hear more of my ramblings, I'm on a podcast called Scottish Watches. We're out twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays. Find us everywhere: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, etc, etc. And if people want to find out more about your watches, perhaps buy some, presents for themselves, presents for other people, where should they find you?
So obviously the main place is mrjoneswatches.com, the website, and then we're on all social media channels, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and so on. And you can find us, just search Mr. Jones Watches.
That's an easy one then. Perfect. Well, next Open Dial is with Schofield Watches, and you will find out all about that in the same place you found out about this one. So thanks for watching and joining us. We'll catch you guys again soon.